Let's see. Did it work? Did it work? Did it work? I'm checking to see if the notification goes into Discord. But it could take up to 2 minutes.
I'll take a look.
Okay. I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at it right now. All right. So my camera's still broken. Sorry. But, this is radio. So just kind of deal with it. It'd be nice to, well, what I should do actually as well is, I gotta stop him. I gotta stop that. I gotta go, where am I going? Oh, yeah. My channel. Yeah. My channel, share, copy, Biskies. I'm going to post it on the biscuit. I'm new. Run.
Get out!
Get out.
Get out there!
Get out. All right. Huh? Yeah, it's because YouTube notifications worked, Lee said. Did
well,
it?
the notification.
Oh, okay. Okay. I have nothing to do, and I'm okay with that. Oh, fuck yeah, Lee. That's the way to do it. That's what's important. I'm going to go ahead and put this.
Demonstrate their ability to fight back.
Put this on
expect,
for
Nancy,
now.
that once California
I'm so glad
does
you have
formally
nothing to do.
initiate these
Yes,
proposed
Friday.
maps,
Thank you, Friday.
We should see those Texas Democrats coming back probably next week.
All
That's
right,
kind
we'll
of
look
interesting.
forward to that.
Did you
Finn
do the
Gomez,
channel?
thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
No deal on the horizon in the fight against plastic pollution.
Oh,
Why
dear.
international treaty negotiations
Dun, dun,
failed.
dun,
And what
dun,
happens
dun,
now?
dun, dun.
You're watching the Daily Report.
Okay, but well, it is free. Hi, Scott. Hi, Pep. Lee. Butterflies was here. I know. It was supposed, I don't know what. Okay, hold on. I'm going to find a good channel for us to watch. Hold on just a minute. Hold on just a minute. Oh, Reuters. I pay them for shit, so they should give me, like, the ability to watch this. Hold on to your love. Hey, girl. Hey, Carla, Larla, Lolo. Carla, Lolo. Yeah, it does not. I guess, did people get a notification in their Discord messages? No, it wouldn't do that, right?
No, I would have.
Yeah. I might have done something wrong. No, now you don't have to watch on RSBN, and I'm not even going to make you watch RSBN. Listen to that, okay? Okay, you be the bot. Danny, be the bot. I'm gonna. Do I want to? I don't want to cover chat. You guys get the point. Actually, I know what I can do. Hold on. Not as if like anybody really needs that. Okay, I think that's actually better. Hold on. I'm gonna. Let me do this one more time. There we go. That's a little better. Kind of. Gosh, I just can't get my like. Why is that? Okay, hold on. I have an idea. Don't leave. If you leave me now, you'll take away the biggest part of me. Ooh, no, baby, please don't go. Ooh, how'd you become number 32? Oh, number 2. Number 3? I don't know, Pep. You know what, Pepper, you have to go in and turn off. It's so dumb. Each individual person has to put up their own, has to block that stupid, what is it called? Top fans or whatever. Oh, it's just the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life, really. And that's saying something. Hold on to your love. I mean, they were supposed to go on. Oh, Bobot. Bobobot. Bobot. Bobot. Good evening, afternoon, beautiful friends. Hello, peace, love. How are you? How are you? How are you? I know. Well, you know what's interesting, Pepper? You say that, but you know what? You're all number one in my heart. It's a lot of number ones, but you know what? I don't care. I make the rules. Did that bot trigger the app message earlier in Discord? If so, I blocked it. That'd be it, Lee. Hi, Karen. How are you? Shit. I guess we didn't warn anybody we were doing this.
Well, it was just a test.
It was a test. Well, you.
I didn't think it would publish. I thought it was just a...
Oh, shit. 22? 22? 120 something? I'll unblock it. Can never. I agree, Lee. Yeah.
Don't unblock it.
Good day. Just
You're gonna get rid of it?
checking our last minute,
Okay. All right. She's getting rid of it. Don't worry about it.
Is getting everything is needed again. You should be having English in your English only modes. The floor will get both everything at the same time.
Oh,
On your
great.
headsets, it should be 00 floor, 01 should
God.
be English, and
I hope
02
Reuters
should
gets
be
the English
Russian,
feed.
on your headsets.
Just
So again,
woke
just
from a
doing
Cheech and
couple
Chong
last
pink
minute checks,
champagne
making sure
nap.
everything is going
Peace.
through as it should. Thank you.
Yeah, waiting to hear of MirrorBot. Well, MirrorBot is gonna be undone. Normal. MirrorBot is gonna be booted by BoboBot. Yeah. Okay, I have a new way I want a clump to go. Bye-bye, spontaneous combustion. Don't let us down. I know. Couldn't somebody just combust naturally? Why are both podiums? You know, okay, Scott, I asked myself that very same question. Why in the world do both podiums have the presidential seal? Is he now the wait a minute. Are you telling me that Putin is now the co-president of the United States? Wow. That's, yeah, I was going to say that's quite a concession. Oh my God. I really thought that earlier. I'm like, does that seem like a Meteor 2025? Jen Griffey for the win. Meowing Star. That's not news. Yeah, exactly. Wait. I got to get some Jenny in here. Hold on. Because Jenny came in. Jenny. Wait, where are you? I don't even know where you are. I don't know. Oops, I don't have it in here. Shit, I don't have your song in here. Swore him in during the Beast ride. Yeah, exactly. We're Russian now. Well, goddamn, at least I can read Cyrillic. Thank God. I'll teach you guys all Cyrillic. No problem. Don't worry about it. I just switched my cell phone from Cricket and my internet from AT&T Fiber both to Spectrum, and I'm saving $900 a year. Karen, I'm glad you're sharing the good news. Have you met Jesus, your savior? For years, I kept hoping for a Bud Dwyer press conference, but he'd never. Like Meteor 2025. Yeah, that's hot. Wait, what does Lee say? Oh, saying hi to Jen. Sorry for the chaos. Yeah, Lee. Why don't you get on that? My God. I was at the dispensary and saw two keywords, pink and Cheech and Chong, and since I had nothing to do in the afternoon, now you understand. Hey man, that sounds good to me. I'm imbibing myself. Wowza, Karen, I just saved a bunch on car insurance. Next, we're going to have ads for, have you extended your car warranty yet? You're in. Oh, wonderful. I figured you were Heckle Images. I'm looking at Discord. Mikey is Heckle Images. Mikey J or JL or JI? JL maybe. So welcome. I'm glad you're part of our Discord now. Whoop, whoop. That's the way it goes. Some things will never change. Oh. Uh-oh. Oh, good. I'm glad it's a potato stream from wherever they are. Okay, it's it's loud. Everything's loud. Loud. JL like the letter. J. Okay. Well, welcome. It's my vision. My vision is not cooperating. I kept sending the salesman away or ignoring him until he came with a deal I couldn't resist. Well, that's the thing, Karen. You're right. You can negotiate. They're not terrorists. You can negotiate with them. Well, actually maybe they are. They might be corporate terrorists. Remember those GTE ads back in the day? I'm not sure I do. GTE or QTOH? Pursuing peace for crimes against authoritarianism. Yeah, interesting, Meowing Star. I mean, this man is wanted on war crimes, and he's on American soil. And the other guy clapped when he came down his red carpet. I highly suggest if you were in Michigan, check for it. Puff, puff, passing. Nicely done, peace, love. I love a good recommendation. Oh, wait, bot Bobo. Oh, you did that, Bobo. Well, that's sweet. Bobo the bot says. It's just the backdrop making me giggle. I know, it's ridiculous. Pursuing peace and harboring criminals. That's what it should say in parentheses underneath that. Did everyone watch MAGA Hat in the Chemo Room? I did. Carla, that was extraordinarily good. Audrey, oh my God. My mom's still in hospital, so I'll share later in the Discord chat. Hi, everyone. Hi, Audrey. How are you, darling? Grace Lisa, it's good to see you. The beast thing makes me Sofa King mad. Okay, so here's the fucking thing about that too, Grace Lisa. You're right. Well, I mean, here's the thing about that too that you're pointing out. He basically, why in the world are they allowed to sit in a limousine without anyone in there? And what the fuck did they talk about? Apparently it was about a 10-minute ride. Oh, wait, let me see if I can find some more coverage because I see dipshit over there. Let me just see if he's saying anything worthwhile, which I entirely doubt. Yeah, what the fuck happened in those 10 minutes? Why doesn't it say peace through strength? Because they couldn't fit it on there. I don't know. I'm not. Oh, wait, here we go. Well, this is something. Oh, this is somebody else.
Want to go live to Ukraine right now as we await the two leaders. Richard Engel is there. And Richard, you heard Peter's reporting. We saw all those images today, including that image of Vladimir Putin in the back of the beast, smiling and waving. And already those images
hey,
and the
bitches.
warm welcome he got here in Alaska is being broadcast throughout Ukraine.
Hey, bitches.
100%. The state television here and
Oh
all
my
of the
God.
news
They could
channels
have all
in this
kinds of
country
things.
are covering this wall to wall. And they've been highlighting the fact that President Trump greeted Vladimir
Jane
Putin
says, "Hope your
warmly,
mom's
that
doing
they
okay,
shook hands,
Adriana.
all the things that you and
Sending
Peter
her
were
so
just
much
talking
love."
about. And they also, it wasn't lost on anyone here, they also noticed how different
That's a
that
good point,
was to
Peace
when
Love. He's
Vladimir
also a
Putin visited
felon.
the White House
We've
earlier
got
this
two
year
criminals.
and got questioned
One
about
has
why
an
he didn't wear a
active
suit,
arrest
and
warrant
that,
out for
that
him.
visit ended early, and many felt that Zelensky was
Not sure
was bullied
why
by
we're okay
President
with
Trump
that.
and his
Lying
inner
with his
circle.
eyes while his
But
hands
aside
are
from being
better
somewhat
working
curious about the
all
different
the
receptions and
time.
maybe even a little bit offended, Ukrainians' concerns about
There we
what
go.
is
Yeah,
happening right
Meteor
now in
2025.
Alaska
Yeah, I'm
go
down with that.
far deeper than the different kinds of greetings that President Trump has given to Vladimir Putin or President Zelensky. They're much more
what did he tell
concerned in this
President
country
Zelensky?
about the
You don't hold the
long-term
cards.
consequences, much
I
more
hold the
concerned
cards.
about what's going to be said in the next
They
few
fill the
minutes.
limo.
Because these two leaders are coming out to the podium does suggest that they have reached some sort of agreement, that they have something to
Let's
announce.
not skip ahead of ourselves
This country's future could
Yeah.
depend on what they announce in the next few minutes. And that is much more concerning to Ukrainians than
I don't think
who got a
anything's
better
going to be
handshake or who
announced,
got a better
okay?
ride in the
I think
back
they
of the
made
limo.
business deals,
Russia
and they'll
currently
decide to
occupies,
announce them when they want to.
20% of Ukrainian territory.
How's his
and
suit?
Ukrainians are concerned
pretty good.
that in a peace deal, Russia could get to keep
They should
some
roofie Trump.
or
Well, I'm
all
wondering if
of
he
that
starts to
territory
disfigure over the next
permanently,
30
or
days.
at least in a
A la
medium
Polonium.
term, redrawing Ukraine's borders and transferring
I
population.
love you, Audrey. Yeah.
All right, Richard, stand by for us. I know you're going to want to hear what's in this news conference as well. I also
mean-
want to bring in Yeah, I also want to bring in Keir Simmons, who has been covering Russia for years for us, one of the last Western journalists to interview Vladimir Putin. Before we get right to Keir, I do want to say it's 6:30 p.m. on the East Coast and it's 2:30 p.m. here in Alaska, where at any moment President Trump and Russian leader Vladimir Putin are set to hold a joint news conference after a nearly 3-hour meeting with the goal of paving the way to a potential ceasefire in Ukraine. Again, at any moment, we're expecting both world leaders to walk out there and potentially take questions about what was learned, what was discussed, and hopefully if there's any progress towards peace in Ukraine. I do want to go to Keir Simmons. Keir, I know you've been listening to all the reporting. You've seen the messages out of the Kremlin. This meeting ending earlier than the Russians initially had stated it would go. Some parts of the schedule are no longer on the schedule. This was supposed to be the last event that was supposed to take place in about an hour. It's taking place now. What, if anything, does this tell us, having studied and covered the Russians for so long?
Who's Yagapur?
Well, I think Trump, and President Trump and President Putin clearly have agreed something, or at least have agreed that it is safe, if you like, for the two of them to stand together. Those images you're looking at, to stand together in front of the world's media and take questions. How many questions will they take? How long will it last? All of those things we wait to see. I will say we have been here before, Tom. In Helsinki, we watched President Trump and President Putin hold a news conference. We know that President Trump likes the spectacle of it, likes the to and fro of it, and often can seem to be making policy in real time as he takes questions from journalists. Will he do that again here? In Helsinki, he was criticized hugely by many for giving too much to President Putin. Will this be different? Certainly, the bonhomie between the two leaders at the beginning of this, two hours ago, suggests that they got along well, and suggests that what you're going to see in the coming minutes are two leaders, ostensibly adversaries, who like each other and think that they can do some kind of a deal with each other. Why would they be walking out together this way unless that was the case? And we are hearing, Tom, reports from Russia that there are members of the Russian delegation sitting in the front row at that news conference, waiting to hear from President Putin themselves.
Mrs. Beasley is there too.
That, I would say, is that the meeting that we just have been waiting to finish was a meeting between Russian and U.S. diplomats. The economic advisors, the trade advisors weren't in the room. Secretary of State Rubio, for example, Foreign Minister Lavrov were there.
Exactly.
Both Foreign Minister Lavrov and another of President Putin's officials speak fluent English, so that may have helped the conversation move at a pace. That being said, we do know President Putin often can be quite verbose, can have a lot to say. So what have they managed to do in 2 hours? I mean, all of these questions.
I think the deal was made in the Beast.
Just going to have to wait to see what the two presidents have to say when they walk out. It does look like at any moment.
I think that's what happened in the Beast.
All right, Keir Simmons, again, if you're just joining our special coverage here, we are waiting at any moment for President Trump and Vladimir Putin to take the stage there at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson. You can see the backdrop and that banner, Pursuing Peace. The goal here for President Trump, he laid it out today. He would like a ceasefire agreement to come out of this meeting. On top of that, he would also like a second meeting, possibly a trilateral meeting, including the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. I want to bring in the moderator of Meet the Press, Kristen Welker. Kristen, throughout the week, the White House had sort of downplayed expectations. They had lowered the bar, calling this a listening exercise, saying basically they just wanted to set the table for a future meeting. But today, President Trump set some goalposts, saying he does want a ceasefire, saying he does want a second meeting. In a short time, we're going to find out if that's a reality.
Pulmonary embolism when you need to
Tom, you're absolutely right. And that goalpost, I can tell you, in talking to European and Ukrainian officials throughout the course of this week, has been set by them, saying that basically a victory for President Trump would require him to walk away with an unconditional ceasefire. That word unconditional, hugely significant, Tom. They say if there are strings attached, that would be a victory for President Putin. So in talking to my sources right now, the reaction, one of waiting, watching to see what these two leaders have to say.
Everybody's sitting down, so they must be coming out.
Process,
this was actually shorter than it was planned, right?
Is there a real agreement that has been reached? Will
it. We're doing it live. Hey, Paul
And
J.
of course, the big question looming over all of this, does President Trump acknowledge that it is President Putin who is the aggressor in this case? That is what Democratic sources say they would like to hear from this president. This is, of course, a conflict that has divided the Republican Party. Some 51% of Americans disapprove of President Trump's handling of the war in Ukraine. Remember, he promised to end this in 24 hours of being elected. He has acknowledged it's proven more difficult than even he anticipated. So this is one of the biggest tests of his second term, Tom.
Christian, stand by for us. We are getting some new reporting. This coming from the Kremlin. The Kremlin announcing this in Russia, that the news conference of the president of Russia and the U.S. will begin shortly. I want to go back to Peter Alexander. We see him there in the screen in front of the two podiums there. Peter, my question to you, I know you have trouble hearing because it's loud there. Do we know if the American press will be allowed to ask questions at this news conference?
Tom, it's a good question. We don't have an answer to that one yet. In fact, this came together very quickly. We did anticipate a news conference. It wasn't clear that both presidents would be here, though that was the initial expectation. Now the Kremlin has announced that Vladimir Putin will be here alongside Donald Trump. I was just speaking to some of the top White House advisors if they could give us any timing on this, any more specifics. They basically said just wait. A Russian advisor to the president moments ago telling reporters when asked what happened behind closed doors, he said, you'll have to wait to hear for yourself. So there was certainly a lot of anticipation about the way that this is going to play out right now. One in particular occurred there, whether they were able to come to some agreement on a ceasefire, whether the topic of, in the words of the president, divvying up Ukraine did come up, even though European allies and Ukraine itself have urged President Trump not to discuss that very topic without Ukraine in the room. So, in effect, we are right now in what Donald Trump in TV terms would describe as a cliffhanger. We wait to see exactly what happened here specifically as it relates to those meetings. And certainly as we've been listening to a lot of the Russian reporters here, including those from state television, they view this perhaps in much wider terms, beyond just the topics of a ceasefire, a potential peace deal as it related to Ukraine. They view this more broadly as an opportunity to restore a strained relationship between the United States and Russia, between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin themselves. So we will anticipate with you what happens, and we'll certainly have a lot of questions we want to ask both presidents. Whether we get that opportunity remains to be seen.
Peter, before you go, because we can see from the wide pool shot where you're standing right now, you seem to be kind of close to the front row, at least from where we're looking. Can you see which members of the Trump administration or cabinet members are already there, and or the Russians, or have they not arrived just yet?
Yeah,
there are members of both delegations here. They're seated in the first rows on each side. Some members of the Russian delegation and of the American delegation. Notably, none of those individuals who were inside the early meeting that took place today, lasting more than 2.5 hours, are present for the U.S. That's the Special Envoy, Steve Witkoff, Marco Rubio, the National Security Advisor, and Secretary of State. They are not here as well. The expanded bilateral meeting, what was supposed to take place over lunch, was to include some of the top advisors economically for the president. The Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, Howard Lutnick is the Commerce Secretary. They were among those who were expected to be in attendance, but to this point, we don't know whether there was in some form an abbreviated expanded bilateral, or if they're just coming from what was a 3-on-3 meeting with their interpreters before arriving here. Tom, to pull back the curtain a little bit, this has been a remarkable day. In more than 13 years of covering the White House, I have not seen security like that, which we have witnessed here today as the American and Russian reporters were welcomed onto Joint Base Elmendorf. Richardson, they each went through separate, in effect, vetting where they were swept to check for any equipment that wasn't allowed to be brought in, any weapons or anything of that kind. And one of the Secret Service officers heading up that process said to me that this was a much more meticulous process than you normally see. So meticulous that as we waited on buses to enter, there were literally Secret Service agents who were opening up each of the pre-prepared lunch boxes, breakfast boxes that were being brought in for those individuals who would be inside here, just to check them so that nothing was snuck onto the property here before today's meeting take place. If we look around this room, I would tell you there's probably a couple hundred individuals here, certainly a full contingent of reporters who cover the White House, the president, on a daily basis. There are dozens of Russian reporters as well, but there are also reporters from all across the world, all of whom obviously would be impacted by the potential of any agreement of any kind as it relates to this 3.5-year relentless war after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Tom?
And I do want to ask you about the reporters in the room, Peter, because explain to our viewers here, are most of the people that are in that room reporters? And how, in a news conference like this, a bilateral news conference, will people get to ask questions if it's opened up to questions, right? Because any reporter on any part of this globe would want to be in there right now asking those two men questions.
Release the polar bears.
Yeah, it's a good question. We don't know the answer to that. I can tell you that every reporter that I'm seated around certainly has questions prepared. I'm sure there'll be a cacophony of voices as they all try to get heard by the president here, trying to get his attention. President Trump, when he holds news conferences regularly, does it a bit differently than past presidents, where he just sort of picks and chooses and calls on individuals as he likes. Whether or not there are some predetermined individuals who will be asking questions on either side, we don't know that right now. Traditionally, there are some opening statements, and I think that's where we will all be listening very closely to get a better understanding of what, if anything, was agreed to, what came of this private conversation, what it means to Ukraine. If the president has already had any conversation, any outreach to the Ukrainian president about the conversation here. He has said that his desire was, and he said it would be easiest if they just extended this meeting into some meetings in the days ahead that could also take place here in Alaska with President Zelensky in attendance. Is there any chance that that would take place right now? So there's just so many topics and so many questions, not the least of which relates to the killing, the deaths that have taken place across Ukraine over the course of this 40-plus months. Hundreds of thousands of people have been killed, certainly tens of thousands in Ukraine alone, where, as our colleague Richard Engel witnessed yesterday, there was another burial of multiple individuals drafted into the war. And the question is really, will Vladimir Putin stop his assault on Ukraine right now and accept Ukraine as an independent, sovereign neighbor next door?
Yeah, we hope to hear what they have to say. And again, at any moment, we're expecting both leaders to come out. Garrett Haake joins us now. Garrett, we were talking earlier that for the president to come out here, announce this news conference, to have that banner pursuing peace like we see it here, the entire world watching, they've notified everyone that this is going to happen at any moment. Yep. People are hoping, especially in Ukraine, that there is some progress. To come out here and not have any type of development. You can't imagine they would set all this up and have nothing to show for it, even though the schedule has changed.
Yeah, look, I mean, we talk about these summits as typically highly choreographed affairs. This has clearly become improv at this point. The lunch that we expected to happen between the broader delegations has gone away. There were elements to this that we had been told would not occur, that have occurred. This press conference happening much earlier
all those guys
than we've
went there for
expected.
nothing?
So I don't want to lean too heavily on precedent here, but despite the best efforts of the White House to lower expectations about this meeting today, they got ratcheted back up by the president's comments on Air Force One, suggesting he'd be very upset if there wasn't a ceasefire to announce today, and by the stagecraft of this event. This is not some small meeting to set up a larger meeting, Tom. This is very clearly something that has been amped up by the president. The fact that Vladimir Putin is still here, that there are two podiums, that they're coming out, does suggest there's some positive development. I want to key in on something that Peter said, because I think this could be the delay that we're in right now. The president said earlier in this week that Zelensky would be among the first people he would tell if there was news out of this. That could very well be what's responsible for this delay right now.
Yeah, the president could be calling the leader of Ukraine, who is right now fighting a war, a wartime president, to let him know of any developments. I do want to bring in the former U.S. ambassador to Russia, Michael McFaul, who has a tremendous amount of experience in bilateral meetings, in meeting foreign dignitaries, including Vladimir Putin. Ambassador McFaul, what do you make of what we've seen so far? We were told possibly the meeting could be up to 7 hours long. It was less than 3 hours. We're awaiting this news conference. I know it's all speculation at this point, but what do you think's happening behind closed doors?
Give me a break. Hi, Badger.
Well, I'm just speculating, but I have been in these meetings with Vladimir Putin and President Obama. Sometimes the small group meeting goes longer. So the one that they just had goes so long that the larger meeting with the full delegation gets squeezed and maybe in this case canceled altogether. So that could be happening. I know the people in that delegation. I see the Russian delegation right now. I see Kirill Dmitriev's head. He is sitting right in the front row. And that suggests to me that the press conference is going to happen before lunch or there's no lunch because he was supposed to be one of the delegates in the wider meeting. But whether that means a bad outcome or a good outcome. I just think we're just going to have to wait and see what the two presidents say. The fact that President Putin will be at the meeting suggests that there should be some positive news.
Gave a BJ to a microphone.
Ambassador McFall, I'm going to tell you, it looks like we have Steve Witkoff, special envoy, who's done a lot of the negotiations with Vladimir Putin. He actually had the meeting that was the meeting before this one that essentially set the table so this could happen here in Alaska on U.S. soil. It looks like other members of the cabinet are going to be making their way inside right now. Ambassador McFall, what is a victory for the United States, but maybe more importantly for Ukraine to come out of this meeting?
Lavrov.
Well, I'm glad you phrased it that way, because summits are supposed to be about what's good for us, the American people, not what's good for Putin or Trump individually. And I think the way we should measure success are our American security interests advanced as a result of this meeting. And in my view, we have a security interest in preventing Putin from dominating and annexing territory in Ukraine. So that's what I'm going to be focused on. Have the president advance that ball, because he put a lot of work into this meeting.
That's a feature,
I mean, literally a red carpet for an imperial dictator who has, not since Hitler or Stalin have we had a leader to launch a war in Europe of this magnitude, with this level of annexation, with this level of killing. So we better get something out of it.
Look at his rug didn't even go to the stairs.
Earlier in the week, European allies, along with Ukraine's president, said that President Trump had told them on a conference call that there'd be serious consequences if there wasn't a ceasefire. Today on Air Force One, President Trump was asked what he meant by that. He said economic consequences. We know that for Putin, he hasn't gotten as much ground. He hasn't gained as much ground in Ukraine this summer. We also know that President Trump has put the pressure on India, 50% tariffs because they buy Russian oil. Russia is struggling financially. Oil funds that war machine in Russia. What could the United States offer to Russia right now? Because there's not a lot of trade that happens between both countries because of the sanctions put in place by President Biden when Ukraine was invaded. But what can the U.S. offer Russia right now, you think?
Well, first, I'd say President Trump has threatened sanctions, and he's been tough rhetorically. But he actually hasn't implemented tough sanctions. Even the Indian sanctions, he hasn't implemented yet. And I think President Putin just keeps calling his bluff. If he wanted to get tough, if he wanted to signal that he was going to be more coercive, which in my opinion he should have done before the summit, not after, there are three things he could do. One, he could seize Russian assets, billions of dollars of Russian central bank assets that are sitting in America. He could do that overnight. Two, he could sanction all of the ships of what they call the shadow fleet that ships that oil out of Russia. Right now, we haven't done that. And three, he could sanction all of the Russian banks that provide the services to allow those exports to happen. He could literally do that on Monday if he wanted to show Putin that he was serious.
And you think for the delegation that the Russians brought here,
I really wanted him to fall on the stairs.
You know, investment advisors, finance ministers, you think what Russia wanted to do here in Alaska was talk business, where President Trump wanted to talk a lot about Ukraine?
Well, most certainly that's what the delegation suggests. I know every single member of that delegation, by the way. I even know the translator. These people have been at this job for a long time. And without question, when you have the head of the Russian investment fund at the meeting, you're there to talk about business deals. Notably, the negotiator on the Russian side with the Ukrainians, his name is Medinsky, the person that's in charge of trying to negotiate an end to the war with the Ukrainians, they've met from time to time in Turkey, was not part of the delegation. And that suggests that Putin wanted this to be about U.S.-Russian relations, with Ukraine just being a part of it. It looks like, if they're not having that bigger meeting, that it was just about Ukraine. And I think that that's proper. I don't think there's any sense in talking about investment deals and trade until this war ends.
Yeah, well,
Ambassador McFall, stand by for us. I know we're going to want to talk to you right after this news conference wraps.
Indeed.
Kristen Welker, the moderator of Meet the Press, joins us now. Kristen, a lot on the table for President Trump. He promised to stop this war. His first day in office. We are more than 200 days in. That timeline has definitely been stretched. He says that he didn't mean that seriously, but you know, he did say that on the campaign trail. We also know that his polling is in the 40s when it comes to his handling of the war in Ukraine. That's what Americans have been saying in two separate polls. officials. And then we also know from reporting he hopes to win a Nobel Peace Prize at some point. And he may very well if he can establish peace in Ukraine. A major moment for the president along the lines that the most important thing here is to end the war in Ukraine.
Well, Tom, absolutely. And President Trump hasn't shied away from talking about that Nobel Peace Prize. As we all know, one of his biggest rivals, former President Barack Obama, won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2009. Tom, notably, another rival of his, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, made headlines by saying, look, if President Trump can end this war and give Ukraine back all of its territory, she would personally nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize. Now, of course, that's all but impossible because territory is really what is at stake here, Tom. But it does underscore the backdrop, the political backdrop to all of this. As you say, his polling underwater, a slim margin. 51% of Americans say they disapprove of his handling of the war in Ukraine. So there's an immense amount of pressure for him to get this resolved. The Republican Party leading the charge, saying that the United States should no longer have to fund the war in Ukraine, send weapons to Ukraine. So that is part of the pressure that he is getting as well. And among the questions, he was in the room there, Tom, with a former KGB official trying to hammer out the terms of what, as he said, he hopes would be a ceasefire agreement.
She's in familiar territory, good old Russian Susie.
One of the concerns with his European counterparts was that President Putin would try to change the subject, would try to shift to his agenda, getting sanctions lifted, for example, trying to get a new nuclear arms deal with the United States. Was President Trump, were his counterparts in the room able to fend off and hold off President Putin's attempts to change the subject, Tom? That's the question.
And Caroline.
We're seeing the president's cabinet come in now. We just saw Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. Before that, we saw Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov come in and sit down right in the front row. We understand we are less than 2 minutes away from this news conference starting. Again, we were told and given signs about 30, 40 minutes ago it was going to start earlier, but this looks to be the real deal. It looks like the two leaders of Russia and of the United States will be walking out shortly. We also anticipate possibly they will take questions from the scores of journalists that are filling those chairs right now at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson. Our reporter, Peter Alexander, is there. The Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, Marco Rubio, along with Steve Witkoff as well. The envoy who sort of set the table for this meeting has been traveling really around the world to both Israel and trying to establish peace there, but also Russia. Somewhat freelancing the role. It kind of goes wherever the president wants to send him. And the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, his role transforming, spending a lot of time now at the White House as the National Security Advisor. These were the two men that were part of the U.S. bilateral meeting, the initial meeting that was supposed to take place, that we believe did take place. We saw sort of the pool spray, if you will. That's when they give us the first images of those people seen together. It is unclear what meetings happened after that. We believe it stands to reason that the lunch was scrapped on the schedule because of the timing of all this. It was kind of fast. I mean, it was less than 3 hours. The Russians had talked about possibly 5 to 7 hours. That being said, President Trump can come out here and say they had a wonderful lunch, they had several meetings, and they made some agreements. But that's the big question. What have they agreed on? What did they come to terms on? And what does it mean for the people of Ukraine who have lost tens of thousands, who are still fighting so bravely, and who have sent their men of all ages to fight against the Russians, whereas the Russians themselves have taken about 20% of Ukraine and have called on North Korea and even their own prisoners to fight this war, even asking North Korea for ammo and weapons as well. As the U.S. has sort of had a back and forth with Ukraine over those weapons as well. No doubt Ukraine could not fight this war without the help of the United States.
You can't wish for
I still have you here. The relationship between President Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky has evolved over the years. It looks like this is about to start. We see President Trump.
Okay, so shut
and
up.
Vladimir Putin, let's listen in.
He's going to say something first.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen,
Bye, Carrie.
Our negotiations have been held in a constructive atmosphere of mutual respect. We had very thorough negotiations that were quite useful. I would like to thank once again my American counterpart for the proposal to travel out here to Alaska. It only makes sense that we've met here because our countries, though separated by the oceans, are close neighbors. So when we've met, when I came out of the plane and I've said, "Good afternoon, dear neighbor. Very good to see you. In good health and to see you alive." I think that is very neighborly. And I think that's some kind words that we can say to each other. We're separated by the Strait of Bering, though there are 2 islands only between the Russian island and the U.S. island. They're only 4 kilometers apart. We're close neighbors, and it's a fact. It's also important that Alaska has to do with our common heritage, common history between Russia and the U.S., and many positive events have to do with that territory. Still, there is tremendous cultural heritage back from the Russian America. For example, Orthodox churches and a lot of more than 700 geographical names of Russian origin. During the Second World War, it was here in Alaska that was the origin of the legendary air bridge for the supply of military aircraft and other equipment under the Lend-Lease program. It was a dangerous and treacherous route over the vast emptiness of ice. However, the pilots of both countries did everything to bring closer the victory. They risked their lives and they gave it all for the common victory. I was just in the city of Magadan in Russia, and there is a memorial there dedicated to the Russian and the U.S. pilots.
Well, it is true.
And there are 2 flags, the U.S. flag and the Russian flag. And I know that here as well, there is such a memorial. There is a military burial place several kilometers away from here. The Soviet pilots are buried there who died during that dangerous mission. We're thankful to the citizens and the government of the U.S. for carefully taking care of their memory. I think that's very worthy and noble. We'll always remember other historical examples when our countries defeated common enemies together in the spirit of battle camaraderie and allyship that supported each other and facilitated each other. I'm sure that this heritage will help us rebuild and foster mutually beneficial and equal ties at this new stage, even during the hardest conditions. It is known that there have been no summits between Russia and the U.S. for 4 years, and that's a long time. This time was very hard for bilateral relations, and let's be frank, they have fallen to the lowest point since the Cold War. I think that's not benefiting our countries and the world as a whole. It is apparent that sooner or later we had to amend the situation to move on from the confrontation to dialogue. And in this case, a personal meeting between the heads of state has been long overdue. Naturally, under the condition of serious and painstaking work, and this work has been done in general. Me and President Trump have very good direct contact. We've spoken multiple times. We spoke frankly on the phone.
He looks like he's eepy.
Special envoy.
He looks really eepy.
Of the president, Mr. Witkoff, traveled out to Russia several times.
His eyes are like slow blinking.
Advisors and heads of foreign ministries kept in touch all the time. And you know fully well that one of the central issues was the situation around Ukraine. We see the strive of the administration and President Trump personally to help facilitate the resolution of the Ukrainian conflict. And his strive to get to the crux of the matter, to understand this history, is precious. As I've said, the situation in Ukraine has to do with fundamental threats to our security. Moreover, we've always considered the Ukrainian nation, and I've said it multiple times, a brotherly nation, however strange it may sound in these conditions. We have the same roots, and everything that's happening is a tragedy for us and terrible wound. Therefore, the country is sincerely interested in putting an end to it. At the same time, we're convinced that in order to make the settlement lasting and long-term, we need to eliminate all the primary roots, the primary causes of that conflict. And we've said it multiple times, to consider all legitimate concerns of Russia and to reinstate a just balance of security in Europe and in the world on the whole. And I agree with President Trump,
he's doing the little slow blink
naturally,
and
the security
closed eyes to me
of Ukraine should be ensured as well. Naturally, we are prepared to work on that. I would like to hope that the agreement that we've reached together will help us bring closer that goal and will pave the path towards peace in Ukraine. We expect that Kiev and European capitals will perceive that constructively and that they won't throw a wrench in the works. They will not make any attempts to use some backroom dealings to conduct provocations to torpedo the nascent progress. Incidentally, when the new administration came to power, bilateral trade started to grow. It's still very symbolic. Still, we have a growth of 20%. As I've said, we have a lot of dimensions for joint work. It is clear that the U.S. and Russian investment and business cooperation has tremendous potential. Russia and the U.S. can offer each other so much in trade, digital, high-tech, and in space exploration. We see that Arctic cooperation is also very possible, and our international context, for example, between the Far East of Russia and the West Coast of the U.S. Overall, it's very important for our countries to turn the page, to go back to cooperation. It is symbolic that not far away from here, at the border between Russia and the U.S., there was a so-called international date line. I think you can step over, literally, from yesterday into tomorrow. And I hope that we'll succeed in that, in political sphere. I would like to thank President Trump for our joint work, for the well-wishing and trustworthy tone of our conversation. It's important that both sides are result-oriented, and we see that the President of the U.S. has a very clear idea of what he would like to achieve. He sincerely cares about prosperity of his nation. Still, he understands that Russia has its own national interests. I expect that today's agreements will be the starting point, not only for the solution of the Ukrainian issue, but also will help us bring back business-like and pragmatic relations between Russia and the U.S. And in the end, I would like to add one more thing. I'd like to remind you that in 2022, during the last contact with the previous administration, I tried to convince my previous American colleague that the situation should not be brought to the point of no return when it would come to hostilities. And I said it quite directly back then that it's a big mistake.
Yeah, but you did it.
Today, when President Trump saying that if he was the president back then, there will be no war. And I'm quite sure that it would indeed be so. I can confirm that. I think that overall, me and President Trump
just given me
have built a very good business-like and trustworthy contact. And I have every reason to believe that moving down this path, we can come, and the sooner the better, to the end of the conflict in Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. That was very profound, and I will say that I believe we had a very productive meeting. There were many, many points that we agreed on, most of them, I would say, a couple of big ones that we haven't quite gotten there, but we've made some headway. So there's no deal until there's a deal. I will call up NATO in a little while. I will call up the various people that I think are appropriate, and I'll, of course, call up President Zelensky and tell him about today's meeting. It's ultimately up to them. They're going to have to agree with what Marco and Steve and some of the great people from the Trump administration who've come here, Scott and John Ratcliffe. Thank you very much. But we have some of our really great leaders. They've been doing a phenomenal job. We also have some tremendous Russian business representatives here, and I think, you know, everybody wants to deal with us. We've become the hottest country anywhere in the world in a very short period of time, and we look forward to that. We look forward to dealing. We're going to try and get this over with. We really made some great progress today. I've always had a fantastic relationship with President Putin, with Vladimir. We had many tough meetings, good meetings. We were interfered with by the Russia hoax. That made it a little bit tougher to deal with, but he understood it. I think he's probably seen things like that during the course of his career. He's seen
it, baby. He built it.
But we had to put up with the Russia hoax. He knew it was a hoax, and I knew it was a hoax. But what was done was very criminal. But it made it harder for us to deal as a country in terms of the business and all of the things that we'd like to have dealt with. But we'll have a good chance when this is over. So just to put it very quickly, I'm going to start making a few phone calls and tell them what happened. But we had an extremely productive meeting, and many points were agreed to. There are just a very few that are left. Some are not that significant. One is probably the most significant, but we have a very good chance of getting there. We didn't get there, but we have a very good chance of getting there. I would like to thank President Putin and his entire team, whose faces, who I know in many cases, otherwise, other than that, whose faces I get to see all the time in the newspapers. You're almost as famous as the boss, but especially this one right over here. But we had some good meetings over the years, right? Good productive meetings over the years, and we hope to have that in the future. But let's do the most productive one right now. We're going to stop really 5, 6, 7,000, thousands of people a week from being killed, and President Putin wants to see that as much as I do. So, again, Mr. President, I'd like to thank you very much, and we'll speak to you very soon and probably see you again very soon.
Okay, so there's nothing, no change?
Thank you very much, Vladimir.
No change?
Next time in Moscow.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I don't know. I'll get a little heat on that one, but I could see it possibly happening. Thank you very much, Vladimir. And thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you didn't. They didn't agree to anything. No questions answered? This was just a blowjob?
So we have just been watching this news conference between President Trump and Vladimir Putin, and it is strikingly unclear what, if anything, was accomplished here. The president saying there is no deal until there is a deal, saying they have disagreed on some major points, but they've agreed on other points, that he's going to call NATO now. He's going to call President Zelensky. But this is quite incredible. Under the banner of pursuing peace here in Alaska on U.S. soil, Vladimir Putin's first trip to the U.S. in nearly a decade, it is unclear what they've accomplished. It is unclear what they've agreed on. And more importantly, it is unclear what this means for the people of Ukraine that are currently fighting a war against Russia that has invaded their territory. Peter Alexander was in that room there. Peter, you know, they were dropping sort of some nuggets here and there, but it's really unclear what they've agreed upon. Putin spoke a lot about a cooperation with the U.S., possibly in trade, in space, in high tech. I mean, a lot of platitudes were discussed, nothing concrete. What is your takeaway from what we just heard there?
Hey, Will, can you hear me?
Well, first of all, this is one of the very few times, Tom, I think we can say that the President of the United States had few words. How many times have we seen him where he took questions for hours and hours today, not taking a single question from reporters in the room, leaving unanswered a series of questions like, is there any ceasefire that was agreed to? It appears clear that there was not, at least from him saying there's no deal until there is a deal. He said there has been significant, as he described it, progress that's been made. A couple things are striking here. You'll remember the president earlier today, as he was departing Washington aboard Air Force One, said he was not going to be happy if there was no ceasefire reached. He would be willing to walk away from this without a news conference and fly back home. Obviously, he stuck around, but it doesn't appear that he came away with what he was hoping to come away with. What is still up in the air is what this means for Ukraine. I was struck by what we heard from Vladimir Putin, who in effect said that they had a series of conversations, and among those things that need to be addressed are the origins of this war. In effect, blaming Ukraine for this war.
Here's what's going to happen.
Most would agree. All
he's going to come back,
that this was a war started
and he's going to
Russia,
say he's going to start making excuses for Russia. He's going to start saying, well, Russia's the victims too because of the Nazis in Ukraine and the corruption in Ukraine and the Russian language speaking in Ukraine and blah, 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 blah. That's what's going to happen.
Impact throughout that region. We're going to be working our sources right now. We were told that the reporters who were traveling aboard Air Force One have already been rushed out of the room gathering. That would indicate that they are going to be heading home very soon, that there are no extended conversations to take place later. But honestly, Tom, we've really never seen anything like this from a president who produced much of today's events right now and left with sort of leaving us again with a cliffhanger in effect.
It was interesting. Putin was trying to draw a distinction between the country of Ukraine, which he said is a brotherly nation, even though it's one that he invaded, and Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, where Volodymyr Zelensky obviously lives, saying that Kyiv may throw a wrench in these plans. But again, both Putin and Trump talked about some type of plan, some type of deal, yet they offered quite literally zero details. And the president himself, though, at one point saying that thousands of lives will be saved if this deal is accomplished. But again, we have no idea what's going to happen. It sounds like he's going to go to NATO and going to I guess, the Ukrainian president and maybe talk about the terms of the deal and come back. But it's unclear. I do want to bring in now moderator of Meet the Press, Kristen Welker. Kristen, you've interviewed President Trump several times. You've covered these bilateral meetings just like Peter. You've been in the room. Look, if we start to read what's happened so far, a lot of the meeting was scrapped. It was shorter than we thought it was going to be. There's a news conference. No questions are taken. And now both leaders are on their way back to, Putin's back to Russia, President Trump back to D.C. What can we read from all this?
This is an extraordinary turn of events, Tom. Peter laid it out well. The fact that this feels rushed, the fact that we just heard from both leaders, and yet it's very cloudy in terms of what exactly was discussed, what was accomplished. They offered few, if any, specifics, Tom, and they took no questions. This is a president who relishes taking questions. The Russian president relishes taking questions when he holds his annual news conference that can last for hours on end. So the fact that this was so clipped, the fact that you heard from a somewhat muted President Trump underscores that he is not walking away from the ceasefire with a ceasefire agreement that he was hoping for. Remember, those were the terms that he laid out at the beginning of this day. That was how he was defining victory: an immediate ceasefire, an unconditional ceasefire. We did not hear the term ceasefire uttered. We didn't hear any end to the fighting talked about. And that really was the goal to this meeting, and to get a second meeting. Will there be another meeting with President Zelensky? I'm starting to get some reaction, Tom. A European source telling me this was a big nothing burger. A Republican ally of President Trump saying it's a very good start, but not providing any details. And a Democratic source saying it's really unclear what exactly happened here. So I think the broad reaction, watching and waiting to see if more details start to emerge, if anything was actually accomplished. And again, that critical question, Tom, will there in fact be another meeting? It seems far off based on the tone. Another meeting that would involve Zelensky, but we'll have to see.
Yeah.
Not only that, Kristen, I mean, we have to know Putin somewhat made a joke about the second meeting happening in Moscow.
Oh, no, I guess
so to me,
over.
that telegraphs a little bit about the seriousness, or maybe lack thereof, of a second meeting, and that they're not quite there yet. I understand you're hearing from your Republican sources as well about this being a good start. It's sort of hard to understand that, because we don't understand it's the start of. People in the world, Ukraine obviously hoping this was the first step towards a path of peace. But again, it very well may will be, but we don't know that quite yet, because we don't understand what he's going to tell NATO and or the Ukrainian president. I do want to go to Richard Engel, who's live tonight for us in Ukraine. Richard, you've been listening to all of this. I'm sure Ukraine, it is very late over there in Ukraine. In the morning, they will wake up to these headlines. But I got to think people in Ukraine are going to be waking up wondering what just happened and what was accomplished.
While this may be unsatisfying, Tom, this was actually very good news for many in Ukraine. Ukrainians have been expressing deep concern
and war correspondent-y. Yes, you're very war correspondent-y. Okay. Oh my God, what a ridiculous exercise in futility. Well, yeah, exactly. Jane really wrapped it up for us saying, well, nobody spontaneously combusted, so that sucks. Thanks, Obama. That was so dumb. We still have a chance for DVT. It's true. It's a long flight. It's a long flight. She's one of the worst normalized. Yes. Oh my God. She's the worst. I'm telling you. Kristen Welker, she really, I thought she was going to be like an amazing kind of, journalist, hard hitting, No. Now to clean it up. That's right. Somebody has to give him his Adderall and his cheeseburger. Medvedev said Russia had Epstein dirt on Trump, right? And Trump looked beaten down there. See, that's why I wondered, Meowing Star, what could have been said in it's deep vein thrombosis. It's like a blood clot. I think he's got some issues with the veins in his legs. So, yeah, that's what it is. Medvedev, yeah. So I think Meowing Star. It is so curious to me what was said in the limo. That was just the two of them, and I'm sure there's a window between them and the driver, right? So yeah, they must have the dirt. Why wouldn't they have the dirt? Oh, hi, Black Bear. More nudes of Melania. Who cares? We've seen all her cash and prizes. Who wants to see more of Grandma's cash and prizes? Nobody. Although the Russians on last night's Russian media monitor, they did have a picture in the background on their set of Melania. And I'm like, why do they have a huge ass picture of Melania? It's true, Pepper. Flying can cause it. Maybe he has his, I hope someone didn't give him his what are those compression socks? Yeah, my money's on cholesterol. I don't know. I mean, can evilness kill you? I guess it can't. Because here he is. Here they both are. Yeah. All right. Well, you know what's going to be better is we have movies tonight, and we have a double feature, and it's a big, long one. So make sure you take a little nap before it starts. But at 6:00 in about an hour and wait, what? About an hour and 45 minutes, you're going to have the evening of your life, and it's going to be amazing. And I'm going to show, we're showing The Long Kiss Goodnight, which is Gina Davis and Lawrence Fishburne, and it is fucking awesome. It's a little violent, so, use discretion, but it's a very good movie. And then after that, we're going to play Logan's Run. Oh my God, with Farrah Fawcett. I love it. So that is Max approved as a midnight film, and so we will be watching The Long Kiss Goodnight, and then immediately followed by Logan's Run 77 or something like that. So get your nap on. Yeah, bait it out. And I'll see you in an hour and 40-ish minutes. Thank you for coming, and thanks for being so flexible with the timing. Nobody really knew what was going to happen. So I love how Trump never gives details. Like he thinks we're all thinking he holds his cards so close to the vest, but really we're like, yeah, nothing was accomplished. And furthermore, the man was falling asleep. Yeah, and also get all that pooping out of the way. He's retaining water. Yep, doing drugs, and no, he's high blood pressure. And Tom, he's probably on blood thinners too, or something like that, right? Don't people like that? Don't you have to go on stuff like that? I just want to say if Putin really wanted it, he could stop. Have a good night. Oh yeah, good night, peace, love. You're absolutely right. He's a fucking war criminal. He could. When I turned 32, yeah, 32. When was that? Let's see. Years of drug abuse, probably congestive heart failure. Yep. Senile dementia. Yep. I agree. Every media outlet was thinking there would be some big deal with large expectations, big ass fail. I know. And none of us really thought that. I mean, I guess we would have thought he would have said something stupid. That's what I thought would happen. Oh, you were referencing Logan's Run. That's right. You can't go after 30 when you turn 32. That's such a good movie. I'm so glad. Everyone's getting those jokes. Awesome. All right. Have a great afternoon. I will see you guys on the Discord. And then I'll see you tomorrow night on YouTube for Lolo's Lounge with some spaced out trivia. I'm more worked out about Kiss getting awards from. I know, right? Yeah, what is that all about? You trying to cheer me up? All right. Ciao, bellas. I love you. Have a good night. If I don't see you, have a great Friday.